don't know why I'm recording this part, but I'm telling you in advance that I don't know, I'm not going to know what I'm talking about today. Today is
harder than yesterday?
Not harder. We're going to finish the parak. The next parak, a little bit of taicha, of like selling a svina, and then there's agadita, that a whole lot of agadita that is just, I don't see any moral teachings in it. I can read it, I can read the words, but I don't know what you're supposed to take out of it. So like there's mefarshim that explain it, but it's like drushes. It's not, there's nothing, there's no pashta pshat that means anything to me. But we're going to learn it, and if anyone has anything to share that's helpful, feel free.
This is where the imagination steps in.
It's I don't know. Sometimes you have like gemaras that are with refuahs, and the gemara is trying to tell you a way to heal yourself. Some practical use. These are just stories about things that are incredibly large and stories, just stories. Okay, but we have to still get to that. We're on Ayin Beis, Amid Beis. I think I gave the wrong blot last night. Amar Rav Huna, 7 lines up. Amar Rav Huna, Chruv Hamurka v'Sadin Hashikma Taurus Inulav v'Taurus Karkalav. I was going to mention a couple of things that are dichotomous. They have, in one way, they're like one thing, another way like another. So these Charuv Hamurka v'Sadin Hashikma, a carob tree that is ready to be grafted, and a Sadna Shikma, fully grown sycamore tree. So these are trees, like we said before, that are very prestigious. And therefore, when someone sells a karka, even though he'll sell other, and he says, I'm selling it it includes the trees on it, these are excluded because they're treated like their own field. So he's saying in some ways they're treated like a tree, in some ways they're treated like karka. Teres inulav, teres karka. In some ways it's like an elan, in some way like a karka. Teres inulav, it's treated like a tree. The hecha de akdish oizov and shnei ilanas bahai. If someone is makdish or sells 2 regular trees together with one of these, the sadan hashikma or the chrod, yesh le karka. We said, we're going to see later on in about 10 blot, we're going to see the Gemara, but we mentioned a number of times that when you sell 3 trees, it automatically includes the karka underneath it. So we're saying if you have 2 trees plus one of these trees, even though these trees, like as we're going to see in a second, are treated for some purposes as a separate piece of karka, but as far as this cheshbon of counting 3 trees that you get karka along with it, they're considered as a regular tree. But teres karka love, and they're treated like a karka, agavara, like we said before, that if you sell karka, this tree is considered as a separate entity on its own. It's like a separate sada, and it's not sold along with the sada. So you see this contradictory definitions of the sadana shikma and the chruv hamurka. Another example of something that has 2 aspects to it that are contradictory. With 5 lines up on Ayin Beis on the base. But Amar Rav Huna, Oimer sheyesh b'sosayim, a bundle on the field that has it within it sosayim, 2 soim of grain. Tyrus Oimer alav is for some purposes considered like a regular bundle. But Torah is Gadish Alav. In so other ways, it's considered like a stack, a haystack, or it's not really a haystack, but a full-fledged stack of grain that's bundled together. What is the difference going to be? Torah is Aimer Alav, the Shnei Aimim Shikha. Shnayim B'hu Einim Shikha. The din is there's a din of Shikha, that if a person leaves behind bundles of grain when he's harvesting, he has to leave it for the aniyim. But it's a maximum of 2 bundles. If you do 3 bundles, then it's not shikha anymore. That's a substantial amount, and it's excluded from the din of shikha. So if you have 2 bundles, and then the 3rd bundle is this extra large bundle that's really, like we're going to see in some ways, treated like a full stack. After they would make the bundles, they gather them together and make them into a stack. So this third one was so large that it had two sosayim, which is a large amount of grain. You still look at them as three bundles together, and the first two, they're not going to have a din shikha. We're going to bundle together, we're going to group together the first two regular sized bundles together with this extremely large bundle, and we're going to say you have three, and therefore there's no din shikha. Perish Gadish alav, and it has the din of Gadish, Shakhu ein shikha. It itself, that third one, if you leave behind one that has two sa'im, it has the din of a Gadish that it itself doesn't have shikha. So saying, on the one hand, it joins with the other two, that the other two are not going to be considered to have a din shikha because it's considered to be three imrim, but it itself would not have a din shikha because it itself is treated like a stack that is too large to be considered something that was forgotten. Shikha literally means forgotten. This is not considered something that's forgotten. Amar Abba Bar Chana, Amar Ishlakish. Chruv hamokum v'sadna shikma banu l'chaykus Rabbi Nachem Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbana. We come to the machlekes of Rabbi Nachem Bar Yossi and the Rabbanan. This is the same machlekes that we had before, that we said that if you're makadosh it together, if you makadosh it together with the field, are they considered to be included? And obviously, Rabbi Nachem and Rabbi Yossi disagree with the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan in our Mishnah said makadosh is ba'ayin yafa makadosh, and Reb Shimon, we had come to the conclusion. Reb Shimon disagrees. He says ba'ayin ra, but he also made the exception that the sadna shikma is included because you're going to have the problem. So we said that he was coming to ask a kash on the Rabbanan who disagree with him from sadna shikma. You should at least agree with me in that case because it's going to be yonik from the karka that you are makash. In fact, why are you telling me it's a machlekes? Reb Nachem and Reb Menachem is saying like Reb Shimon. So let's just say Reb Shimon and Rabbanan. He just wanted to tell you that Reb Nachem and Reb Yossi holds like Reb Shimon. The Mishnah continues. The parah continues. It's been one long Mishnah, really, saying all the different ways that when you sell a house and you sell a sada, what gets sold along with it. Now we're moving along to when you sell something that's not karka, not a house or a sada, but other things, what gets sold along with it. So Meicher Sasvina, someone who sells a ship. Machar Saturin, he sells along with it the mast, Besanes, and the sails, Besaugen, and the anchor. Beskol Haman Higanaisa, everything that's used to propel the ship. The Gemara is going to say it's talking about oars. Avaloi Machar Loyes Avodim doesn't include the Avodim. I guess I don't think they used sailing ships back then. I guess they had sails though. It says sails, but I guess they had Avodim that would run the ship. They would also have oars, the galleys. Loyes Hamartzufin, and not the sacks that we used to pile, that we used to contain the cargo. Loyes Antiki, and not the cargo itself. If you sold a ship was full of sacks of grain, neither the sacks nor the grain or the sailors, the Avodim sailors were included. He says everything's included, and all these things that we just mentioned are included together with the ship. Again, all these things really come down to what does a person have in mind when he sells something. Turin, so Gemara now is going to say what the taich of all these things are. Turin Iskaria. Turin are mass. Erez Melvanan Lachulasas Turin Alecha. They took cedars from Lebanon, to make a mass. The cedars of Lebanon are known to be extraordinarily straight and tall, so it makes sense that they were used for mass. Nes Adra, a nes is a sail. Sheish Berekma, linen that was decorated. The Mitzrayim from Mitzrayim Vashach Aliyas L'chol Nes, which spread out to be a sail. Ugin are anchors. Tani Rukia Elu Uginan Shala. This is talking about the anchors. V'cheinu amar, halahen tisha b'av. Now this is talking about Naomi said to Rus when after her sons died, that are you going to wait Arashi Gadlu halahen until the other brothers grow up? The Agna Labilti Hayes Leisha, you're going to be Mu'ugin until you get married. So it makes a lot of sense that the word Ugnan should be an anchor, right? We all know that Igun, someone becomes an Aguna. What does an Aguna mean? Someone who's anchored, they're way down, they can't move on. That's what an anchor is. An anchor is something that keeps you in place. Manhigan, the Mishnah had said, V'chol ha-manhigan, so everything that pushes the boat, Amar Bava, Ela ha-mashutin, this is the oars, Shalah. V'cheinu oimer, Eloinin ibashin asu mishutecha. Eloinin are, I think, a kind of tree, oak trees that you make. That's what they use to make the oar. Or else you could say from here, Yardu mi anyoseyem kol tov shei masud, and they took down from the boats all of the people who were holding on to oars. Tanarabban, a meicher sasvino, meicher has iskalia, iskala. This is the ramp that you use to get onto the boat. There's bar hamayim and the water tank shebesaycha that's in the boat. Someone who sells the svina, he sells the dinghy. Every large yacht has a little dinghy that you use. You can't pull up the boat all the way up to the beach, so you take a little boat, a mini boat, and you go use it to go onto the beach. He says he sells the dugas, which is the same thing. Dinghy, Amarava, Beitis Hainu dugas. He says that these are the same thing. He was from Bavel, so he called it a butis. The small boats of Mayashin. Sumkos the Barat is so, Sumkos so, Karlu Dugas, Kidasiv Achrichem, Besirois Duga. And at the end, you're going to be taken away into Gullus in a Duga. Okay, so now we are starting the promised Agadata. And Menachem, you didn't hear my, I don't know, Dovi, did you hear my Hakdama? I don't know what any of this means. And if you have any suggestions, you feel free to share. Amar Rabba. I met these people who go out on the sea. They came across High Gala, this wave, the mitzvah Svinas. They would swamp boats. It looked like at the top of the crest of the wave, it looked like a white fire. And you hit it with a stick that's written on it. Eyasher, Eya, Kashem, Tzivakos, Amin, 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 Sela. You hit it with a stick that says these three shemus of the Rebbeinu Shalom, and Amin, Amin, Sela, Benayich, and that causes the wave to subside. Amar Rabba, I guess there's going to be a theme. There's going to be another story which also talks about how the Rebbeinu Shalom controls ultimately everything in the world. Amar Rabba, Ishtoli Nechucha Yama. I heard from a wayfarer, Bengala, I think, Bengala Lagala, Flasmea Parsa. He saw waves between one wave and the next was 300 parsa. It's a very large area. Veruma de Gala Flasmea Parsa. And the height of the wave was 300 parsa. A parsa is like 7 mil, which is 5 miles or something. So we're talking about literally 1,500 miles. Zimna Chada Havazlinen Ba'urcha. One time I was going on my way, but Dalin and Gala and a wave picked me up. Ad Chazin Beimar Ba'isa de Chuchvazuta. I saw where the resting place of a small star. Bahavali Kimivzar Arboin Gruya Bezera de Chardla. It was like the amount of area that would be sowed with 40 I don't know what it is, measures of mustard seeds. So a very large area, which is interesting that the Gemara was aware that stars are very large. Like we look from this in the sky, you see stars are tiny. But the Gemara was aware that they were actually large. So if you get close to them. Bidalinan tfei, had I been picked up a little bit more, have a maklinan mehavle, I would have been damaged by the heat of the star. Viramila gala kalal chavet, and one wave called out to the next wave, chavrisi, its neighbor. Did you leave over anything that you didn't swamp, that you didn't destroy? Now that I'll go and destroy. Amalei, so the other wave said back to him, go see the strength of the Rabban Shalom. That he places even a thread of sand, we can't pass over. Rabban Shalom says, will you not bear me, no Hashem? Will you not be afraid of me? That I made the sand as a boundary for the ocean. I made it as a that it can never be passed. So again, you see the same. I guess this is the same as the previous story. You see that the Rebbe Shalom ultimately controls the features of the world. Amar Rabba, Horman bar Lilis. I saw Horman, the son of Lilis. He was a shade. Kikarot akufa deshura de Mechusa. When he would run on the edge of the gate of Mechusa, Virot Tarsha, and underneath him was running a soldier. Girachav chiyusa mitatoi. While this soldier was on top of an animal, I guess a horse, underneath him. And the shade could not keep up with the soldier. Zim mechada have a misrago in la tarti kudnaicho. This shade was holding two kudnaisi. Was holding two. What's he doing? He was jumping. What did you say? He had two mules. The Kaimin Atre Gishri the Rungav, and the two mules were on the two bridges of Rungav. B'shayar Mehailahai, and this demon, this Horman, was jumping from one mule to the other. Mehailahai. The Nakatre Mazgi the Chamra biyad. He was holding two cups of wine in his hands. Umarak Mehailahai, and he was pouring from one to the other. Mehailahai, and from the other one to the other. Not a drop fell to the ground. That day there was a tremendous storm. Until the Malchus heard about it and killed him. Now, the Pashas, when I read this, I thought it meant that somehow through his juggling of the waters, he was causing the storm. But the Rashbam doesn't say that. If you look at the second line in the Rashbam, Tarti Kasi Dechamra, Shnei Malay Yaim Vahaya Moirik Chavai Biyachat Zebetev Zebahadi Tkamishra. He's saying even though there was a big storm, he still didn't spill anything. The waves are going up to the sky and down into the depths. Became and then it says the Rashbam continues the next two lines later. Bei Malka the Shady. One shot the Rashbam says is that the king of the Shadim killed this Horman. Because he was showing off in front of people, and he was being Megala, the world of Shadim. They're supposed to be hidden, and he was doing it openly. Some say it was the earthly king. The Keser was scared that this demon would take away his malchus. So this shade was a more earthly type of shade, that he was born from a shade that was born in Isha, and therefore he lived amongst the people. So that's why the Keser. Right in the Gemara, Amarabba, Lidi Chazili or Zila Bar Yuma. I saw a re'im, which is a kind of animal that we're not exactly sure what it is. That was one day old. I have a kahar tabar. It was the size of the mountain of Tabar. Kahar tabar kamahavi. What is the size of this mountain? So Gemara Abba Parsi, four Parsi. Umash'acha the tzavara tlosa Parsi. The length of its neck was 3 Parsi. Ubeimar ba'asa the ratio when it would put down its head, Parsa of Palga, 1.5 Parsa. Ra Mukufsa, when it would defecate, the Sachalela Yardena. That would make such large glolim that it would block up the Yarden, the river Yarden. Amar Abba Barchana. Now we're starting to just say large things. Lidi Chazili Hahi Akrukta. Rashi says Tzvardim. Rashbam says it's a frog. The Haviki Akra the Hagrunya was the size of the city of Hagunya. The Akra the Hagrunya Kamahavi. What was the size of that city? Shisim Bati, 60 houses. Also Tnina, a serpent came Bala, and it swallowed this frog. Also Pushkat Kansa, a bird came Ubala Tanina, it swallowed the serpent. The Salik Yasa Be'ilna, and then the bird went and sat in a tree. Tachazi Kamanovish Chela de Ilna. You see how strong that tree must have been, that it was able to hold the bird that ate the serpent, that ate the frog, that was the size of 60 houses. Amar Papa Bar Shmuel, Papa Bar Shmuel said, if I wasn't there, I wouldn't have believed it. Which I guess, I don't know, maybe this is me being cynical. What he's telling us is, even though Rabbi Barchana said it, he said, I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it. I guess that gives us license to say like Papa Bar Shmuel, since we didn't see it, maybe we don't have to believe it. I was going on a ship. I saw a fish, the Yasvile Achla Tina Buusha, and it had a bug in its nose, in its nostril, and it killed it. But Maya, the water threw out this fish that died from having a nose blockage. V'shadyu leguda, and I didn't think fish had noses or nostrils. I guess maybe they have nostrils. They don't breathe. They be through the gills. It looks like holes in the front.
Some do, yeah.
Okay, maybe it's like one of these amphibious fish, like a mammal.
Well, that is kosher.
Right, for sure not. No, there's no kosher mammals that swim because they can't regurgitate. They can't chew their cud. They don't have. They don't have. I guess they're fish. I don't know. And that's way off the topic. Leguda threw it on the beach. The size of this fish was such that it destroyed 60 cities. Then there were 60 cities that ate from its flesh. Another 60 cities salted its flesh. And from one eyeball of this fish, they filled up 300 barrels of oil. So when they came back a year later, they were making boars out of its bones. They were rebuilding those cities. I guess you see from here the circle of life, right? That this thing destroyed the cities. A year later, they took away all of its flesh. A year later, there was nothing left of the whole fish. It was all gone, and all was left was bones, and it was cleared off so they could rebuild the cities. I was going on a ship. I saw a fish. It had collected sand on its back. And it started to sprout a swamp. It was such a large fish that the sand on its back was large enough to make an island. Savrini Avashni, we thought it was dry land. We went on it and we baked and we cooked agabe on its back. When it heated up the back of the fish, the fish turned over in order to scratch the itch on its back. The heat. Our ship wasn't nearby, we would have drowned. I was going on a ship, Besagi Safinta Ben Shitza, Bashitza de Kavara. And our ship was traveling between one fin and the other fin of a fish. It means it was a large fish, and we were going from the fin at the back to the fin at the front of the fish. It took us 3 days to travel from the front of the fish to the back. With and 3 nights. The fish was going against the current, and we were going with the current, so we were going really fast. And if you'll think that our boat didn't really move very far in those 3 days, during that ship was traveling so fast that when a pot of water would heat up in that amount of time, it would go 60 parsa in that time. And if someone shot an arrow, the ship would be going faster than an arrow. And even so, it still took 3 days to go from one end of the fish to the other. This fish was a gildan of the yama, like a small minnow of the sea. But it grew very large. Islay trey shaitzi, that happens to have 2 fins. I was going on a ship. I saw a bird. It was up to its ankles in water. It was so large that its head was in the sky. We thought that since it's only up to its ankles, there probably isn't much water here. We wanted to go into the water to cool ourselves off. The Navak Baskal Amar Baskal came out and said, don't go in here. The Naflas Chatzitza Lavar a tool of a carpenter fell in. Hashav Shni, 7 years, it didn't reach the ground, it never reached the bottom of the water. The Nefishi Maya. It's not because there was so much water, not just because there was so much water. Because the water was so violent, it was throwing about this hammer or axe of the carpenter for 7 years. Therefore, it's not a good place to swim. Amravasha Yahu Ziz Shadayu Sadihu. This is a traveler of the fields. That's the name of this bird. The Ziz Sadai Imadi. These birds are the Benjamin says are with me. They fly up very high. I was going in the desert. I saw these geese. The feathers were falling out because they were so fat. The kanadi nachli the mishkami tusayu, and rivers of oil were coming out. They were so geschmack, so mashuman. Aminalu islabu b'chayu chalka la'almadasi. I said to them, do we have a chelik from you in Olam Haba, in Lasad Lava, when the Rosh Hashanah is going to make a suda for the tzaddikim? As this looked like a very delicious bird. Chali, Gali, Gudfa, one picked up its wing, Dali Atma, and one picked up its thigh to show what was the chelik that the tzaddikim Lasad Lava would get a portion of. Ki asayla kamei der Velazar, when I came to Velazar, Amli Asidin Yisrael Litan L'lein Asidin. He said the Yidden are going to have to get a punishment for what they did to these Oivzin. Rashbam says that if the Yidden would do the right thing, if we do mitzvahs, Mashiach would come and we'll be able to eat these geese. In the meantime, these poor geese are hopping around, fat as anything. They have miserable lives. They disallowed foie gras in New York because they would stuff the ducks and the geese full, and they were fat, and it was considered to be inhumane. So the Gemara agrees. The Gemara is saying it's inhumane that because of our Averis, we're keeping these geese in this terrible situation. I was going in the midbar. We came across this Arab sailor, traveler, that have a shakal afra, he would take earth and he would smell it, like Sherlock Holmes. He was able to identify where any earth came from. I don't know if you guys are young enough that you still read Sherlock Holmes. They probably more saw it on TV. But Amar, plan. By smelling the earth, he would say, "This is the path." This I could see that some of the earth from this road came from that place, and I could smell it. I recognize the smell. Amalei kama machika mimaya. It's ask him, how far are we from water? V'amalan havali afra. He would be able to smell the earth. Yavinulei. V'amalan tamni parsi. He would be able to even smell from the earth how far they were from water. Tanina ve'avinulei amalei machirin plus a parsi. He tried another one. He said, "This is now with 3 parsa from the water." After slave they tried to switch around the earth. They thought he was just making things up. He really just knew where the roads led. He just had a map in his head, but they would switch around the earth, and he would correctly identify the earth, even though it wasn't attached to that path. This traveler said to him, to Rabbi Khan, "Let me show you where the people who died in the Midbar." He showed them where the Mesi Midbar, the Yidden who died in the Midbar. The Damu command the Mivsimi Gonara Arafti, and the Bnei Yisrael who died in the Midbar in the 40 years of wandering in the Midbar, they looked like they were drunk, meaning that they were so their faces were shining like someone who was drunk. They were so complete, and they were lying on their backs. One of them had its leg up, its knee. One of the corpses had its knee up. And this traveler, this Arab traveler, rode underneath the knee of the corpse of this Bnei Yisrael, riding on a camel, holding up his spear. So the knee was so high up off the ground, there was room for him to ride underneath it. And it didn't even touch his knee. Paski Chana cut off one corner of the tzitzis of one of these mason, the Chaminayim. And because he did that, they weren't able to move. There's a whole long taisus that discusses why they were wearing tzitzis. When we bury someone, we don't put on kosher tzitzis. We cut off a corner of the tzitzis because once a yid is a mace, he's no longer able to be mekayim mitzvahs. So there's a whole long taisus about why the mace Bnei Yisrael were wearing tzitzis. He suggests that maybe that since they lie down the way they died was they would lie down in the karim while they were fully alive, they were still wearing their tzitzis at the time. Amali, in any case, they couldn't move after Rabbi Chana took away a corner of the tzitzis. Amali, so the Taya said to him, Dilma shakas midiminayu. Maybe you took a specimen, you took something from these corpses. He didn't see that what he had done. Ahadre, the Gemiri demanded shakal midiminayu la mistagni. Whoever loots these mason, they're not going to be able to move. Azli Ahadre, he returned the corner of the tzitzis. V'hada mistagilan, he was able to go. Rabbi Chana came back to the Rabban. They said to him, they heard the story. They said to him, every Abba, meaning Rabba Bar Chana, his real name was Abba, is a donkey, and Bar Chana is a fool. Why did you do this to take the corner of the tzitzis? Tell us that Allah is like Beishamai's hill. All you should have done was counted the tzitzis. Machlekes is whether you use 3 threads that are 6 or 4 threads that are 4. You should just counted it and told us, and we would have believed you. That's all that you need to. You didn't have to cut it off. Okay, we'll stop over here. Let's continue on Matzah Shabbos.
Right. Thank you.